Good afternoon, friends, family, loved ones, enemies, distractors. This is Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint. And this week's show is called A Vote of Competence. Coming from that, I was saying a vote of confidence. We're going to talk about confidence. What's up, Daryl? I appreciate you showing up to the Blueprint. And Dee Dee, I appreciate you joining in on the show. And of course, this is 2020 election year 2020. Presidential elections is on the ballot, or coming up on the ballot this November. So that's why I'm going to dedicate this show to a vote of competence. And before I begin, I want to quote Bobby Seals, one of the leaders of the Black Panther and the founders of the Black Panther Party. Bobby Seals said, "We are not outnumbered. We are out-organized." That's a quote that I heard that Bobby Seals said. We are not outnumbered, but we are out-organized. So what does that have to do with a vote of competence? Today's show. And well, I'm going to go back to that later on, but you'll understand why I quoted. I wanted to bring that quote to your attention. So what is competence? Competence is know-how. Basically, is how competent you are. That's your know-how. And if we look at the definition of competence, it's the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. Your ability to do something effectively and successfully. Efficiently is how effectively you do something. So a vote of competence is, we're talking about your ability to do something successfully or efficiently. So what does efficient mean? What does efficient mean? What efficient is having a maximum achievement or productivity with a minimum waste of effort. Maximum productivity or achievement with a minimum waste of effort or expense. So we want to be successful in 2020. So what would we deem being successful in 2020? Many of us have a bullseye. We have our crosshairs on the bullseye. The bullseye is Trump. Everybody wants to get Trump out of office. I mean, we've been listening to all these political heads in our communities talk about the Mueller report. That was the thing. When the Mueller report comes, Mueller going to investigate. You see it on social media. Everybody having these little videos and memes about Trump being taken out of office and trying to run from the FBI and them tackling them to. We were being bombarded with all this Mueller report stuff. The Mueller report came and went. Then the next thing was the impeachment. That was a big thing. That took a lot of focus from the Black community. All of our political leaders, so-called political leaders, or those that believe in the system, everyone was talking about the impeachment. And the impeachment came and went. And now we're talking about the elections 4 years later. So we're going to talk about our competency in the 2020 elections and how prepared we are for the 2020 elections. How successful are we going to be, or do we think we're going to be? Because once you're competent, that breeds confidence. And what I see as an issue is there's a process to get results. And a lot of times in our Black community, and probably the brown community also, is we want to forego the process. We just want the results. Just vote. And the most basic thing that you can tell someone is to just vote. And a lot of times what you will see, and we see this, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to start getting out there trying to register people to vote. That's the first thing. You have to register to vote. To be able to vote, you got to register. So a lot of people out there, are you registered to vote? And they have a sign-up list and things like that. They want to get people registered to vote. But then where does it go from there? Many of us say, well, just vote. Where's the education process? And to me, the first thing you have to have is the steps is you have to be educated on what you need to do, why you need to do it, and how to go about doing it. And what we do, many of us that play politics on social media, we just say vote. Everyone needs to vote. If you don't vote, then you shouldn't say anything, blah, blah, blah. And, once the election's over with, your candidate loses, then you're saying it's those people fought that didn't vote. But I'm going to talk about the game and how it's set up. And this is part of the education of what's happening when we're talking about elections. Because many of us, we play politics. Many of us out there, we don't really get into politics. And I will venture to say, most of those people that say, well, I'm voting for Hillary, I voted for Hillary, and I wanted Hillary to beat Trump and blah, blah, blah. And if someone asks you about Hillary's, her foreign policies or something like that, her policies, they wouldn't know. They probably wouldn't know. I venture to say most of the people that come on social media talking about Bernie or whoever they wanted to vote for, or whoever they want to vote for, many of them don't even know their foreign policies. Many of them don't even know their economic policies. They hear snippets or sound bites of somebody saying, well, I'll give free education, free college and things. But what actually are the policies? That's something that someone is offering to grab your attention. But what's their policies? This is just what I'm saying. If I ask many of these people that come on here that's, trying to bully people into voting, because I'm going to say bully because a lot of these, they'll call you, if you don't vote, you're stupid. If you don't do this, da, 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 da. But I'm going to ask, what are those people doing to make sure? Now, it's not just about voting, because if you just vote, and I say, well, if I was voting for Trump, they wouldn't care if I went to the polls or not. The thing is, you want to be successful. What you deem as success is getting a candidate that has your best interest in mind, that's going to get Trump out of office. That's how most of us out there feel. That's success. But what we do, we go out and we just say vote. Everyone needs to vote. Some people go a little farther and try to get people to register to vote. But then it stops there. And that is the same as 1940 Black America, 1930 Black America. Just vote. Just vote. We need people to vote. Just vote. I'd like to thank Leah for showing up, Avelina for showing up. Welcome to the Blueprint. Joe, welcome to the Blueprint. And Tony, I appreciate you showing up. Welcome to the Blueprint. So this is like just vote. Everyone just vote. Everyone needs to vote. But that's the end of their process. Just get as many people to vote as possible. They're not worrying about what you know about voting. And this is the thing about competency and education. Things that we need to instill and incorporate into any movement that we want to have in minority communities. You want people that's going to be competent. And see, the thing when I brought up 1930, 1940 Black America, a lot of times what was happening right out of slavery, of course, that was a generation that wasn't allowed to read. That was an uneducated generation. Once we got away from slavery, a lot of our institutions, we had a limited amount of people that was going to be scholars and whatnot. Most of those people that came out of slavery, they knew what they knew was labor, or the basic fundamental skills that Booker T. Washington was saying that many of us need to enhance to become, not be a burden to America. I'll put it like that. It was telling us, learn how to do these, work with your hands and things like that. Many of us saw that as being like an Uncle Tom. He said, make yourself useful to white people. Something that we say in a different way as far as when we talk about W.E.B. Du Bois and him, Booker T's thing was like learn a skill, learn how to work, learn how to be employable. because we weren't owning any businesses at that time. But also at that time frame, what was happening is there was a fight for to being able to vote. You know, there were Jim Crow laws. A lot of black people weren't allowed to vote only to the civil rights movement. Down south, a lot of people in the South wasn't able to vote until after the civil rights movement. You know, they were being hindered. And a lot of that hindrance is still going on today. And we're going to talk about those things and those efforts that's being made. But the just vote attitude, just register to vote, just be able to vote attitude that just stops there. That goes back to early 1900 America, as far as in the black community. Now, if you educate those voters, then they will understand the tactics that's used to suppress their votes. They will understand, and many of us should understand and be understanding of what's happening at the booths, the polls. But this is where my issue with a lot of us comes in. We'll sit here and say just vote. And my question would be, how many times or how many of us are out here making sure that everyone is that they can be registered to vote? We talk about the process. I said the process for results. You want the results, but what's the process that you're willing to go through? Those people that are not understanding of their rights to vote, how are we educating them? Those people that are not registered, how are we making sure that they get registered to vote? Those people that don't have a way to the polls or don't even know when the election election time is, how are we educating them? How are we making sure they have a way to get there? How are we making sure that they are registered or that they have the credentials to be registered to vote? How are we doing? How are we educating the community? I don't see a massive effort going on in the black and brown community for those things like that education process. But yet we just sit back and we say, well, everybody just needs to vote. Everyone just needs to vote. So my thing is, once you go, and those people that go vote, they do early voting and things like that, then they get their participation medal. I call it a participation medal. I voted. They get a little tag to say, I voted. I played my part. You played a part, but when you're a part, what part of a machine are you? What's your part? You're a part of what? Those people that believe in the process, those people that partook in the process. A participation medal. But what's your objective? Are you just, is your objective to participate, or is your objective to win? If your objective is just to participate and say, I voted, then you should be happy with the results no matter what they are. And if you're going to do just the basic fundamental requirements, then you shouldn't complain about the results because you just participated. What part did you do to make sure that who you wanted to win won? Who you wanted not to win didn't win? And see, what happens a lot of times, and what's the verbiage that goes on is, well, it's the lesser of two evils. You know, we participated in the lesser of two evils, and we wanted the lesser of two evils to win. And what you see a lot in social media, and this is what my gripe is with a lot of these people, and I sit on the sidelines and I watch. I won't go in their post and say anything, but I sit back and I just watch. And I watch things unfold. And I watch things unfold in the long run. But what I see, you know, people, a lot of in the black or brown community, we'll say, well, a lot of these poor people, these dirt poor people in Kentucky and Tennessee, whatever, Arkansas, they voting Republican and they're poor and they're voting for the rich. All of these candidates are rich. Republicans, Democrats, they're all rich. This country is based on not the rights of the people, but the rights of the rich, the wealthy. And we get the crumbs. We fight over the crumbs. So what actually happens is a lot of us sit there and we'll point fingers at those people that vote for those that we oppose, we deem as our enemies. And what we have to realize is, and we do the same thing. And if you take a step back and get out of this, my side, their side, if you look at someone, you say these dirt poor people, or these hillbillies, or these rednecks here, whatever you want to say, just saying that they're the idiots because they're voting for your enemy. They're voting against their own interests, as if your party wants to make everyone else rich, or everyone else well off. And when we say we're voting for the lesser of two evils, that means one person, or one of these evils that we're talking about, don't give a damn about us and telling us that they don't give a damn about us. The other side is they don't really give a damn about us, but they're not telling us that to our face. So we're smarter than those that's voting for the red party. And I'm going to give you another perspective on that. What you're doing, now we're siding, the real opposition goes on between Republican and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. That's the real opposition. And what we realize is that, well, the liberals really, they're not really for us, but they're against them. And if you switch that chessboard around, if you look at things from a different angle, those hillbillies, rednecks, whatever you want to call, that's voting for their Republican candidates that we say don't have their best interest in mind. Maybe their best interest is the lesser of two evils. Maybe they're voting for the ones that's against their enemies. And maybe their enemies are those in the Black and brown communities. So that's why it's not that, hey, I'm voting for him because I'm rich. Now, what I think goes on in America is there's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance that's going on. A lot of us believe in the process. A lot of us believe that these candidates, or these this side or that side, is actually have you in mind, your best interest in mind. And if we look at the history in this country, it flip-flops back and forth. Republican, Democrat, Republican president, Democrat president. And it's just whoever's feeling what at what time. And you look at how things have improved. Now, a lot of us that don't even, that's misguided, we'll sit here and say, well, the economy was better then. And we're listening to news broadcasts about the economy, the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones took a crash the other day. How many of us were personally affected? How did that change the bread that was on our table? Those are rich people games that they're talking about. Those that are invested. You know, once you make enough money and you have enough money, whether Obama's the president, Trump is the president, you're still going to have your money. It's just going to be an inconvenience, a slight inconvenience, one way or another. This is why my perspective is improve your community to where you're independent. And I'm not talking about an independent candidate. I'm talking about where you're independent, where you're not as dependent on someone else to provide for you. I mean, that's what we look for our kids. We want our kids to grow up and be independent, where they don't have to depend on us. And when they get to that point, what they have enough money to take care of themselves. And this is what my point is, that we need to be more independent. But I have no problem playing the game. No problem supporting those that want to play the game. But what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to play the game, at least play it to win. And what I'm seeing is many of us are not playing the game to win. We're not even understanding the game. And we have these political leaders that come on social media and things, and they're what I would call hustling backwards. That's what we call it in the hood. We hustling backwards. You going against your objective. And I see something like they project the Democratic uh, candidate to beat Trump 60-40. And I see people post this, and I'm thinking, if they're a leader, a political leader, or they're a person that's out here pumping politics, why would you post things like that? What you're doing is making people relax. And anyone that knows anything about sports or any competition, the last thing you want to do, especially team sports, is go in overconfident, because your team or your players tend to believe the hype and they go in unprepared. The best thing that can happen when you have a team, competition, any kind of sports with team competition, is to not be overconfident, for one. And what you want is for your players to be on the edge. You want them to be a little worried. But we take away that edge when we post things like that. And that's probably something, and you see tactics with that, with one team is about to play another, and they say, man, the other team is great. Man, the other team is going, man, I don't even know how we're going to match up or be. And they're not, all the while they're saying that, and they're confident. They're confident in what they're doing. And they're setting that other team up because they want that other team to believe those headlines. All they have to do is show up. And then when you're talking about elections and you're posting things like that, oh, well, this side is going to beat this side, in the polls, and the election is going to be easy, then those people that's going to have any difficulty showing up at the polls, we're going to say, well, they don't really need me. It's, I got something else to do. I don't feel that good. They're not going to put forth the maximum effort. They're not going to put forth the maximum effort to get the productivity that you want, that you're looking for. They're not going to produce the results that you want. The results that you want from any individual to show up and actually vote for your candidate. That's what you want. And if you're posting things about this candidate doesn't have a chance, or they don't have a chance, and things like that, then you're not going to get maximum participation from those that's on the fence, from those that's having any kind of difficulties. And you're not putting forth that maximum effort anyway, because you're not making sure that everyone that's on the fence is going to get to the elections. You're not doing pool parties, and what I mean driving parties, where you're picking people up, or having call-in lines and saying, hey, if anybody needs a ride, like some of these people do when people are drunk driving, they have to call me. Anytime you're out there, call me, so you don't drive home, or, blah, blah, blah. But we don't do that when it comes to election time. We think it's important. We act as if it's important, but we don't say, well, you know what, I'm going to make sure everyone in my community is able to get to the polls. And I'm going to get with other people that have vehicles in my community, and we're going to have some kind of process that people can call us if they don't think that they could get to the booths. We don't do things like that. We do the very minimum. Just tell people they need to vote, or sign people up for registration. We don't do any kind of educating. We don't do anything like that. So when those that oppose you are out there turning people away, because those people that you are telling to vote and are not competent and confidence, they show up and the person say, do you have this on you? And they'll say, no, well, you can't vote. You need to go do this. And they're turning around in line for two reasons. For one, they're not confident and competent within themselves in knowing their rights and what they really need. And for two, you don't have someone there at every place that it is to vote. Every designated voting area for you that knows the law, knows the rules, and sitting there looking over those that's coming there to vote and making sure that they're able to exercise their right to vote. We're not doing that. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's in a black community, a brown community is saying, hey, You show up at this location. This is another location. I know all the rights. So when someone comes over there and tells you take somebody out of line, you say, hey, what was the problem? And no, that's not right. You could go ahead and vote. Nobody's there to challenge those that want to suppress your vote because we're not thinking like that. We play politics. We're not organized. The other side is more organized. Not that they're more educated, they're just more organized. They come out and they have an objective. And if their objective is part of their objective is suppressing votes, then that's how they want to go about it. The education process is very important. That's very important to know what you're supposed to do, know what you can do, and know your rights to do it. And actually have someone there to support you when you're trying to do it. Because what tends to happen is in this country, I'm gonna say this. It's the Gallup poll said that it was far as Democrats and Republicans in this country. You want to look at the history and wonder, well, why, this year it's a red president, this year it's a blue president, this term, that term, the House is this one time, the House is that another time. There's 29% Democrat out of the people that's registered voters. 29% of them are Democrats. Do anyone know what percentage are Republican? Can take a guess. And I'm going to answer before you're able to go Google that stuff. 29% of registered voters are Republican. 41% are independent. I'm going to read a comment. Tony said, you said it, ignorance. That's what's going on now. Ignorance. I appreciate that. Joe said liberals are not for the poor and working class, but for themselves to stay in power. That was deep. I'm going to say this. I don't think neither one of them are for the poor or the working class. And if any of us that took political science and look at the temperature in this country, America is about the rich. America is about capitalism. What people don't understand is what capitalism is about. In capitalism, you have to have a poor or the working class. The reason why we say poor is in comparison is to those that have money. You have to have people that's willing to flip burgers if you're going to own a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Whataburger. If you don't have people that's willing to flip the burgers, then your business is not going to be able to produce burgers. You have to have people that's willing to work for crumbs so that you can have a bigger piece of the pie. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat or whatever. You have to have people that's willing to shovel the sewage. And if you're rich, you're not going to do that. You have to have people, you got people in the hospital, those that pay for a high education, as doctors and things, nurses and things like that. Then you have those that didn't pay for a high education, that didn't have the money for a high education. And those are the people that's taking out the trash, doing the dirty work. You have to have that in a capitalistic society. And the thing is, we don't want to look back, just look at things. We just look at things from our candidates. We argue points that this side argues and that side argues. But in the big picture, Vegas is not going to run out of money. Vegas is making money hand over fist. Every weekend, every day of the week, they're making their money. I don't care who hits their little jackpot here. That little jackpot is those little victories. Oh, this red candidate won. Oh, this blue candidate won. The system, the rich are going to stay rich. The rich are going to stay rich. Regardless. And we're talking about those little machines that Vegas already said that, some people are going to win. Some people are going to win. We need people to win. We need people to win so that everybody will keep coming back. But most of the people are going to lose. And in the end, the process is most of the people, everyone can't be rich. When I was in the military, and you stay on base. If you're like, you're unmarried, so you stay on base. Or a lot of people, even if you were married, some people have, but see, all of us made money. All of us was part of a socialistic system, a socialism. That was socialism. Everybody in the military, you work for the military, you work for the government. No one was making money on their own. Whatever my job was in the military, it was for the military. Now, I'm not here just pumping socialism or whatever. I'm just letting people see the difference in what I'm talking about. It's no individualism. It was socialism. I made the same amount of money at my grade as the garbage man made that was in the military working as a garbage man. I made the same amount of money as some of my friends made that were cooks, but they were cooks in the military instead of being cooks at Whataburger. They were flipping burgers and doing things like that. If they were E4 and I was an E4 and I was a radar technician, I made the same amount of money as he made. We all worked the same. So therefore, if me as an E4, electronic technician, radar technician, wanted somebody to work on my car, I couldn't go tell that guy that was an E4. He was like, why would I do that for you? He's making the same amount of money. He's driving the same car that I have. And we probably stayed in the same whatever area because we all make the same money and we all had a paycheck coming. But when you're in a capitalistic society or capitalistic system, what you have is you have to have an elite, you have to have a middle class, and you have to have poor. You have to have people that's fighting for those entry-level positions because you make more money that way if you don't have to pay your workers as much. And you're getting the maximum amount of productivity with the minimum amount of waste, effort, or expense. Effort or expense. If I could get somebody to do something for me cheaper, then I will make more money. That's the bottom line. That's capitalism. Those that can capitalize and make money, and it's a supply and demand. You have a supply, you have a demand, but there's also, as far as your business, but there's also a supply. If you have a supply of poor people that's willing to work those entry-level jobs, because there's a demand for that. So you have to create that supply. You have to have a poor community here and there. And 9 times out of 10, this is what I'm going back to my political science classes, man. This is what the communist or the socialist argument was about capitalism, that it was a different way of having slavery. Classism, constructed classism. Now, I'm going to, just leave that there. I don't want to get too much into that. But when we're talking about those that want to play politics, I want to thank my niece Jazz for showing up. I appreciate you joining the Blueprint of Pi. I appreciate you showing up, Wayne. Appreciate you showing up, Cuz, and Vince and Valerie. Welcome to the Blueprint. Reading a comment from Tony. She said, and the poor will stay poor if we don't be independent. And that's what my point is. I appreciate that comment. We have to build within ourselves to where the hierarchy, whatever happens there, it won't affect us regardless. Now, when I made a quote from Bobby Seals, Black Panther Party, their thing was power to the people. That's what they used to chant, power to the people. And they weren't just talking about black people or brown people. They were talking about people all over the world. They had Black Panther Party people that was in Australia, the Aborigines. It was an Aboriginal Black Panther Party in Australia. When you start to learn more, you start to see, and what they're talking about, and people say, and they will say, I'm not a social, I'm not a communist, I'm just against oppression. And what our Constitution says begins off as we the people. But of course, we knew that didn't mean, that meant more of the we instead of the people. I put it like that. Because a lot of the rights that we had here in this country, or a lot of rights that they had in this country, didn't cover us. We weren't part of those people that was covered in the Constitution when it was written and for, years after it was written. But that was just a term, we the people. They should, if you identify what they really meant by who the people were that they meant, then you'll see that many of us was excluded. But the education process, many of us don't understand. Like I had Joe was on here, me and him had a conversation about democracy. And the attitude and the mentality was, these people come over here with their ideas and things like that, and they want to change things. Well, my thing is the process, but I kept asking, so what is this country? Is it a democracy? Now it's set up to be a democracy. We call it a democracy, but it's a democracy in only a certain sense. And my thing is, no matter if you're about the people, and it's like the comments that was, well, these people with these, idiotic ideas. Well, if you can't set up a democracy and then say what ideas are good or bad, the ideas of the minority is better, or the ideas of the rich are better, or the ideas of these people. If it's more liberals than it is conservative, and your viewpoint is conservative, then your democracy is set up that the laws will be implemented by the liberals and vice versa. You can't get mad at the system and say, well, the electoral college is this and that, and they the ones that went against the popular vote and they elected Trump, but they had the same system for the last election that you won, where your candidate won, when Obama was president. You can't get mad now and say, well, what the electoral votes is a problem with the voting system. That problem was already there if it was a problem. You can't just call a problem out when it don't work, when it doesn't work for you. Education. If you have too many people that's believing in something that you don't believe in, then what you need to do is get out and educate people and on what you believe in, and show people and tell people and teach people why what you believe in is better. You can't throw away the process when the process doesn't work for you. But going back to the competency of the vote, once we get into a point that we are trying to succeed and not just trying to participate, because many of us, we want to succeed, we just don't come out and say that. We want our candidate to win. We want our candidate to win. But what are you doing to make sure that your candidate wins? And when we look back at our history, when we talk about education, a lot of us is like, we look at our history, we look at what happened at the last elections. For one thing, we had a projections that, well, Hillary's going to beat Trump. It's going to be 60-40, whatever, blah, blah, blah. What happened on the Democratic side? And what people don't realize, Trump speaks for a lot of people in this country. He speaks for a lot of people in this country, whether we want to realize that or not. For the popular vote with Hillary and Trump, Hillary won 66 million voters, which was 48%. Trump won 63 million, which was 46% of the popular vote. It was 235 million registered voters at that time. 235 million registered voters. Almost half went for Trump, almost a little over half, or I'm not going to say half. It was 2 million votes between the two. 2 million people. A difference between Hillary and Trump on the popular vote. That's not a lot. 2 million out of 235 million that participated. You're talking less than what, 1% difference in the popular vote. So Trump had 66 million out of 235 million voters. almost half this country. There's just as many Democrats as there are Republicans. There's just as many Republicans as there are Democrats. Almost the same amount. What we have to understand is it's not you're outnumbered, you're out organized. You have organization issues. And those that lose, then they turn around and they want to say, well, you didn't vote. Well, this person didn't vote. Well, this person, it's people on both sides that didn't vote. What you have to do is look in the mirror, look at yourself, look at your tactics, look at your organization. What are you doing to organize? Of course, many of we're not going to go out there. You don't hear a lot of accounts of liberals going out there trying to suppress the vote. That's been a conservative thing. These people are voting that shouldn't be voting. That's a conservative thing. But if you know what your opposition is going to do, then you should be prepared for what your opposition is going to do. So if you know there's going to be voter suppression going on, then you should be going out to those polls, making sure people are not turned away. But we don't do that. And I'm saying I'm not into politics like that. I'm into community. I'm into individual politics. I'm not into these rich elite. I participate, but I'm not thinking that that's going to solve the issues that I have or that I think we have in our communities. I think we have to begin with us. So I am saying we, because many of the people I know are sitting up and they're all engaged. And I'm saying, if you're going to get engaged, you need to be fully engaged and understand the process. You can't forego the process. We have to be out there educating. We have to be out there organizing. We have to be out there playing a part. We have to be out there not condemning each other, because what you have to understand is when we look back on when I'm talking education, anytime people get educated, you look at history also. You rarely find people that claim that they're educated and then they don't know a lot about history, because you have to learn from what's happened to understand what's going on. Now, we look back at the 2016 elections. We had in the Democratic elections, primaries, we had Bernie, we had Hillary, the two main people that were running for the Democratic nomination. And why they thought that whoever came out of that was going to be able to easily beat Trump was because they figured that if Bernie won, the people that follow Hillary was going to get back Bernie and vice versa. And that wasn't the case. Many of us that sat there, that was sitting up there getting upset or mad and saying, well, people that vote, people didn't vote and you didn't put forth an effort to make sure people voted. You didn't sit there. A lot of these people that were sitting there right in your face that were Bernie fans didn't vote for Hillary. They refused to vote for Hillary. I was looking at an article about a poll that said 12% of Bernie fans voted for Trump. 12%, they voted for Trump. And then another poll said only 6%, but they rather vote for against their agenda than to vote for the candidate that won their primary elections. A lot of those people, and then a lot of them just didn't participate because they were like, I'm not part of it. I see both of them as bad. The other side didn't do that. A lot of those candidates saw Trump, the locomotive, and they jumped on that bandwagon instead of opposing him. They opposed him in the beginning. Then they saw that, okay, I'm not going to be able to beat him. So they fell back, but then they didn't just fall back. They fell out, but then they put their people behind Trump. And this is why the morning after, a lot of people woke up surprised because they thought what the polls were saying, well, Hillary should win. Hillary should win. But those people that participated in voting, a lot of them voted independent with Bernie. A lot of them said, you know what, I'm not voting for Hillary regardless. Some of them voted independent, where that independent person wasn't going to win regardless. So they actually threw away a vote as far as when you're talking about Republican and Democrats. The independents, they're really not going to win. So a lot of the culprits was in the Democratic Party. When I went to after Carver, I attended an assembly, and it said Trump won the presidency. Now what? When I went there, much to my chagrin, a lot of that was just a bitching and whining conference. It wasn't a strategic thing. No strategies were talking about, or this is what Trump policies are. This is what we need to do. It was basically a bunch of Bernie people that was whining about the DNC taking away or stealing the election from Bernie against Hillary. That's all it was. It was a bitching and griping thing, and I wasted my time because it doesn't. None of that bitching and no, none of that was going to change anything. And this is the not being organized thing. You know, this is what that is. No one came up with, okay, this is what we're going to do now. This is what, this is how we need to do this. Now, the midterms came around, people brightened up some, and they did get, a lot of the conservatives overturned. But that's going to be a back and forth thing regardless in this country. If you look at the history of this country, it's going to be a back and forth. They're not going to let one side have too much power. It's a checks and balances thing. If we sit here as the poorer people, as in comparison, and we've going back and forth over those people that's making money hand over fist. Local politics. Many of us will sit in our communities and think that most of the people that in the world is Democrats. And other people sit there in their communities and think most of the people that they know are Republicans. 29%, 29%. Just as many Republicans as there are Democrats. And if you get a Republican president, they probably give him a little bit of power for a little while. Then all of a sudden they're going to say, okay, his power is getting a little out of hand. Then it's not the Democrats showing up that's making a difference in the midterms. It's those people that's on the fence. It's those people that's on the fence. The game is being played. Vegas is winning. The rich is winning regardless. I don't care who the president, the rich is winning regardless. Because any of these investors or people that own businesses, if one president is in there and he has some type of mishap or whatever, and the Dow Jones is starting to lose money, those people are not going to lose their money per se. They are cut workers, and it's not going to cripple them. I'm talking about the rich. I'm not talking about this mom and pop business that's saying, okay, you know what, India is not exporting silk or whatever, and I'm dependent on it. And I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the major corporations, the major businesses. Those people, those CEOs, they're not jumping out of windows or anything. I don't care who the president is. They're not, it may be hurting. They may not be making the money that they was making, but they're very wealthy, regardless of who the president is and who's controlling the House or the Senate. They're wealthy. I'd like to thank Bianca for showing up. Read a comment from Dee Dee. She said, if you don't vote, you can't complain. I'm gonna get to that. Teresa said our president is not very smart, but he has smart people that create the strategy that allows him to be successful. He said, I was not understanding why he didn't want to have Republican primaries until he revealed his hand in the South Carolina primaries. I have to click on something to read the rest of that. He said where he told Republicans to vote the Democratic primary for the weakest candidate. Wow. He said, wake up, people. She says, wake up, people. Trump is not smart enough to implement that plan. That's organization. Exactly. Tony said, right. She said, perfect example of the impeachment trial. Okay, and she said, Bianca replying to Dee Dee, she said, I hear this a lot, and I feel that this statement is so inconclusive. Some of us as in the community, not as in the color, couldn't vote even if they wanted to. So does that mean that they in turn that in return they have an option or complain, as you say as well? And Tony said back and forth, and Joe said the rich is winning, and Tony said that's the problem. I appreciate all these comments. And now the thing I'm I'm gonna get into this also. If you don't vote, you can't complain. I'm gonna tell y'all some people that probably didn't vote. I don't think Malcolm X, when he was alive, that he voted. I can't even foresee Malcolm X. He did a lot of complaining about this country, and he didn't participate in the process, but he did a lot of complaining. And then that would be like telling Malcolm, hey man, you need to quiet down. If you're not gonna vote, because see, when you participate in the election, this is what you're saying, that this is going to solve our problems. Some of us have believed that we have problems, that it doesn't matter which candidate wins, these problems still going to exist. Some of us look at history and say, you know what? I don't care who was the president. I don't care when Obama was president. Trayvon Martin still got killed. You know, a lot of these people that we're talking about that got killed, that wasn't when Obama was president. A lot of our issues are personal. And they've been personal in this country for a long time. You know, a lot of things that this country has allowed to happen, and is allowing to happen, has nothing to do with the president. You know, the president, a crooked cop, I'm going to say a crooked cop, he's not going to stop being crooked because, oh man, this guy is president now. A crooked employer is not going to stop being crooked because of the president. He's not going to change his views because of the president or who has the majority leadership in the House. Just like a crook or a criminal is not going to stop selling drugs because who's the president. A lot of us have issues with things in this country, and they're not founded on elections. They're not going to be corrected with elections. And I don't think a lot of these things are meant to be corrected with elections. I'll put it like that. I don't think a lot of these things. So with a lot of things that we're doing, we're fighting for issues that's been issues no matter who's been presidents. And if I venture to say, I'm gonna ask anybody, who's been the best president that you had in your lifetime? Now I saw a poll that people said that Obama was the best president that they had. A majority of Americans said that. Well, I mean, he won 2 elections. He won the popular vote and all of these things like that. So that's not surprising. And the thing is, how did that change things for us as far as racism? How did that change things for us as far as how, in fact, in a lot of ways, it made things worse because people were mad. And like Rush Limbaugh said, we're losing control of our country. So how do you regain control? When you get upset and you want to regain control, you got to eliminate people. You in that process seemed like that was happening. Not that we needed anything to happen to make a racist person going to be racist regardless. That's my point that I'm getting at. It doesn't matter who's the president. Since when did the KKK stop being racist because of the president? Like I said, Trump has a lot of followers. He speaks to what a lot of people want and how they want it. And Tony said, but now it has changed, Kevin. When Malcolm X was alive, it was a big difference versus now. And I'm not going to say it's a big difference. And if you're saying it's a big difference, tell me those big differences. I think the biggest difference is that the difference between Trump and Hillary. I'll put it like that. Because the Clintons did a lot to hurt Black Americans when Bill was president. Look at the documentary 13. They did a lot to hurt us. Did they do as much as the Reagan administration did? pumping crack in our neighborhood? Probably not, but they persecuted those people differently. And my thing is, whether we are being fooled, those, and when I'm saying we, I'm talking about those that are telling people these little, don't complain if you haven't voted, or just vote. This is going to change things if you want change. Either those people are fooled or those people are trying to fool us, because no, they can't show you anything that's changed. Everything that we've gained in this country, if you're going to say through politics, is things that we should have had in the first place. That's why I'm gonna put it. We should have never been, um, put in the positions that we are asking for rights, and we're still asking for equal rights. And anybody today that thinks we're equal, please come on the show. I like to have that conversation. Um, Tony said we have to really stop the ignorance and pay attention. She said, right, elections really don't matter now because of the House. Well, we're probably talking about the Senate, as far as the elections, but I mean, but see, this is what I'm saying. When we had a super majority with Democrats, the first 2 years when Obama was elected, we had super majority. That means the House, the Senate, and the president were all one. Um, well, they were all Democrat. That still doesn't change racism in America. That's what Malcolm X was about. At no point in this country have black people, brown people, and white people all been equal or treated equally. It doesn't matter who's in the House and the Senate. The laws have been out there. It's been against the law for a police officer to gun you down, to take, the law in his own hands, unless he could find a way to get around it and say that this person reached for my gun, or this, because you can't, if you can't prove what he's saying, then what difference does it make? A police officer being on trial for murder of Tamir Rice, or Mike Brown, or Oscar Grant, or Marquise Jones, any of these issues that's recent, that we're saying that things have changed. The president, the House, the Senate, a congressman is not going to try him. He's going to be tried by whom? His peers. And when you have half the country that's willing to vote for a person that's racist or doesn't mind the racism, now they may not have bigotry, but they may have racism. And we have to educate and understand the difference. A person can say, I don't hate black people, I don't hate brown people, but they can still be racist. It's the difference between being bigoted. Bigoted is hatred. Racism is when you're basing things on people's race. And if you could side with a person just because they're a white person with a blue uniform, and the person that was gunned down was a black person, and you're saying, well, I back the blue without any evidence, then that tells me you're being prejudiced. That's prejudice. And if it's because of the race, then that's racism. So things really hasn't changed, because the peers are the ones that's getting these police officers off. His peers, that means people that's in your community, people that's in America. That's the difference. Now, it's probably a bigger, and I'm gonna venture to say, I think a lot of these people that feel that way, that felt the same way they felt in the 60s, that those people felt in the 60s and things like that, it was just how things were. Rights weren't granted. Those laws were in place. Those acts, they were in place, but they weren't being implemented. You still have discrimination based on sex, based on color. You still have to deal with those things like that, even though that's against the law. People still are going to steal, murder. That's against the law. If a murderer, if a person has it in them to murder, and it's against the law to murder, they still going to murder. That's why you have people in prisons. And I'm saying all these laws could be passed or whatnot to say that, but the point is, there's an elite class in this country that's ruling everything. And we at the bottom must understand that. And if we understand that, then we will change our tactics. I'm not saying if you want to, and this is my thing with the Trump thing, the Trump monster, everybody, the boogeyman Trump, right? Trump is the pig. Trump is that pig. And we're sitting there looking at that pig in disgust. And we're saying, look at him, man, slobbing and snot running out his nose. He's in this pool of mud and slop, and he's crapping in it, and he's urinating, he's wasting it, and he's still eating. He's just that disgusting animal. We'll say that. People have no problem talking about how they don't like Trump, but they don't like the pig. They can't stand the pig. The pig is filthy. But then they don't mind the pork chop because the pork chop is seasoned. It's prepared different. A lot of this country is the pork chop. A lot of these people that's against Trump are not sitting up there and they can't wait to get Trump out of office or whatever. They want him in prison. They want all this stuff. But then they'll go out there and they'll have the pork chops and be patronizing businesses that support Trump. You know, all of these conservatives that's supporting him, you know, we're not even after them. Those people that's been around, that's going to be around for another 20 years and 30 years trying to implement programs and all these people that think like that or that Trump thinks like, that supports him. All these businesses that's pumping money into his campaign. Some of these employers that we may work for that's carrying on that ideology. They didn't just begin to be like that when Trump came along. The KKK was who they were before Trump came. The skinheads, the white supremacists, all of them, they were who they were. They just come out the closet now. It's easier for them to come out the closet. And if you don't want to see them, that doesn't mean it's easier for you to see. They say when you cut the grass, the snakes will show because you want to see the snakes when you're there. You don't want to walk in high grass because you may walk in this, but now the grass is cut. All the snakes are showing themselves, but a lot of us don't care because it's just all about Trump. And I asked somebody that's posting all this stuff on Facebook about Republicans, conservatives, and Trump this and Trump. And I said, well, what you doing? I'm going up here to Home Depot. Well, I'm over here at Bill Miller's. Oh, I'm over here. You're supporting the same people that support Trump. That's disorganization. You're doing a lot of talking and you're playing politics. Or I'm over here at this Valero. Or I'm over here. And my thing is, not outnumbered, but out organized. I gave you the numbers of the percentages of the people that's able to vote, registered voters, what percentage was Democrat and what percentage was Republican and whatnot. The thing is, if you are against them, then you shouldn't be supporting anybody that supports them. We as an organization, they should be saying, you know what, this is a list of all the companies that's supporting Trump in our community. This is the list of all the people that's supporting Trump in our city. I don't see that. I don't see that pumped. I don't see that as part of the organizations that's going on. I just hear people say everybody needs to vote. Just vote. Just vote. And that's what the problem is. Trump is the pig. We don't like the pig, but we're okay with the pork chops and the ribs because they don't look as ugly as that pig before that pig is seasoned and everything. This is our problem. Tony said, I go to certain parts of New York and I be looked up at inside my head. Time to Wonder. Wow, I haven't heard about Time to Wonder in a long time. And it's going to be places all over. You know, Teresa said our government is a Ponzi scheme. They take our money by the way of taxes and do what they want with it. We get no say and no return on our investment. We give our money to other countries and do not use it to take care of our needs in this country. I appreciate those words, and that's very true. And that's been going on a long time, no matter who the president's been. Um, reading, I got a lot of comments on here. And Jasmine said, that's why I stopped going to IHOP. And Tony said, hypocrites. Bianca said, the biggest difference to me is accountability. In the times of Malcolm X, Dr. King, Miss Parks, Nina Simone, hell, even as far back as uh, Miss Minty, a.k.a. Harriet Tubman, where um, we were all to be held accountable for what they did and how they carried themselves. I got to click on this to get to the rest of that. She said unapologetic, and they stood on it. Now we have activists who throw a stone and then hide with their hands or stick up for us, but secretly take handouts and endorsements for those very same people who they can't, who they say can't be trusted. That's a valid point. I appreciate those. And are the enemy. I appreciate that, those comments. And this is true. This is why I say we need to start at the core. We need to educate our own and educate ourselves on what's happening, things that we're able to see at that time. Now, when we look back at the time of Malcolm X, you look back at a different time, what ends up happening, what happens is we're able to reflect because we're finding out things. Who killed Malcolm X? This is new information. We weren't privy to that information. We get to see things in a different light. But if we look at our history, it's not, and take that veil off of our eyes and understand what's happening and what has been happening. And it's okay to be engaged in this electoral game that's going on. It's a game right now. I mean, yeah, you want to win the game, I understand. But my thing is, all those people that's been talking about the Mueller report, the impeachment for the last 4 years, you know, the Russians, all this stuff. But what are you doing to prepare us? You know, that's okay. That's politics. That's Trump. That's whatever. But what are you doing in our community to prepare us for if he doesn't get impeached? What were you doing in our community to prepare us for if your candidate don't win? It's not a guarantee. What are we doing? All year for the last 4 years, people been talking about, that's been talking about Trump. But I don't see the things, the same commitment or the same energy being used to talk about bettering ourselves or what we can do or educating us on the things that have been happening, on how to veil and clearing that, you know, taking the veil off our eyes. If all you worried about is winning this election, then you're going to be right back in the same position. Somebody else is going to be gunned down December the 3rd, December the 5th, December the 7th, when it's a new president, and it's not going to make a difference as far as who the president is. What are we going to do about that? You know, organize, be organized, and get some things done. Understand what's happening right before your eyes. Have a vote of competence and a vote of confidence. If you want to go to the polls, I have nothing against people going to the polls. You know what? Set up something where people can be effective. And I have no, and I'm gonna sit back and watch just like I did when Trump won and all the things that was going on, and everybody talking about Mueller and everybody spending all this energy on all these things that didn't happen. And I'm gonna sit back and watch the elections. And I don't care who the president is, and I'm gonna be saying the same thing in my mind. I knew this was gonna happen. Now everybody's mad, and I'm gonna say, but at least Trump ain't it, you know, president, or maybe Trump is, or whatever, you know. But it's gonna be the same thing because we're not preparing. And what Einstein's definition of insanity is if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. We keep just saying vote, vote, vote and expecting different results. And those results are not being different in our community. We are not made to be rich in this country. We are not made, we are house guests. We have to do things on our own and make a way on our own. This is what Malcolm was talking about. Harriet, Booker T, W.E.B. Du Bois, those were different eras where we were at a different point. Now we have to deal with the point that we're in. I'm not saying we separate. I'm saying what we need to do is be smarter with our money, organize, be smarter with our politics, organize. Be smarter with our education. Organize. Support our Black-owned businesses. Try to build some type of economy. Try to be a force to be reckoned with. This is a democracy. A democracy means that the majority is governed by a population or its members. And it's an election process. That's what democracy means, where the majority rules. Out of all the people that's registered to vote, less than 13% of those people are Black. Less than 14% of those people are brown. 4% of those people are Asian. Over 66% of those people are white. That's a democracy that we're talking about. How your vote is going to make that big of a difference. Democracy. And it's not just 6% of the people that's registered to vote are Black. It's not a voter registration issue in the Black community. In fact, the voter registration percentage has gone up. We're only 12% of the population here in America. So it's about the same amount. 12%, 12.5% of the voters that's registered to vote are Black. So we're representing about our piece of the pie, but this is a democracy. And we have to understand what we are looking at. We have to understand what we're dealing with, who we're dealing with. This country is full of people that support Trump. And they may say that they're not bigoted, but my point is, if you could put your interests, or you could put a person being bigoted or racist to the side because you have an interest, that means that your interest is more important than my well-being or the fact that, things are happening in my community at a disproportionate rate. Then that tells me a little bit more about you, and that tells me a little bit more about this country and how far we've come in this country. Because right should be right and wrong should be wrong. No matter how much it costs you, the little bit that it may cost you financially, economically, or whatever, right should be right and wrong should be wrong. A person that lives in this country should have a right to vote just like you do. Those are issues that we need to look at. And we have to come to a realization of what we're dealing with in this country. That's this week's show. I appreciate y'all showing up. We need to organize, people. We need to organize. We are not outnumbered, just out organized. And it's a time we got till November. And I was thinking about a song, but as far as this politics stuff, I'm gonna be gone till December. I'm not gonna really get too much into that. But if anybody want to come on the show and talk about politics or whatever you want to do, I'm all for it. I'm not against it. I'm for it. Whatever you want to do, but we need to organize. We need to educate. We need to be more competent. And then we'll be better off in a better position. Peace. Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint, signing out.